Welcome to Dear Business Coach, the podcast. My name's Elizabeth. Find one thing to move your business forward today with conversations, spotlights, interviews, articles, and free resources. Listen and follow and subscribe on social media. Dear Business Coach pages and groups. Dear Business Coach podcast. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and don't forget Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, anywhere you listen to podcasts. All it takes sometimes is one little thing to move your business forward today.
I've been hitting Control Z after they've done all the stuff, so I have a backup and say, man, it's gonna get erased. Excuse me.
I think that I am just now finally getting used to, as an adult, that everywhere in life on computer application, on software, there is an autosave.
Cool.
I am not, I still don't believe in it. I don't believe it's real.
Yeah.
I don't believe it's real.
Good. Yeah, but I helped. There's a guy up there who's like 90 and he's an author, and he thought he lost the manuscript to his book. I was like, wait a second, and there was an auto recovery. I'm like, and I found it. I don't look like the cool guy because I found it. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah.
So
okay. Yeah.
One of those things. Once we have a coffee, this is perfect.
I know, this is really nice.
Much better than the screen.
Well, you know what? I kept your notes.
Hey, listeners!
From the talk
don't forget
that
to
you gave
subscribe
at the
to
Writers'
email
Conference.
if you haven't already.
Your handout
Do this
was
at
really awesome, and it's actually in my
dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com.
email.
And if you are a new subscriber,
took a photo of it and
look
emailed it
for
to
the
myself.
magazine coming up. You can get a free download as a new subscriber. That's dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. Thanks so much, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember, you are a superstar.
Well, Josh, welcome to the Dear Business Coach podcast. How are you today?
Great to be here sipping coffee in downtown Roanoke. This is awesome.
And what I know about you, and thank you for coming today. We've tried to do this a couple times, and this is so much fun. I think that probably there's probably a few episodes that I could ask you to do, but today. I am particularly thinking back about your talk at the Roanoke Regional Writers Conference in January. So that particular day, you gave a talk that was around, I think the nuts and bolts of your talk was to help folks, get through their writing process in a motivated way. And what I actually took away moreover from that day was how you are talking about writing submissions as a business, treating it like a business. And then also in that process, maintaining your writing and integrity, your writing process. What are some of the ways that you can use this idea of submitting your writings as a business and also keep it fresh and utilize that process to your advantage as a writer? So I might be extrapolating a little bit too far what I thought your talk was about.
Away. Well, I'm always curious to hear what people get from it, because that's you have some in your head, you say it out loud, and then, what do people hear? And I think one of the things too for your listeners is, this is not just for writers. So if you're listening in and you're, if you run a nail salon or whatever, I think the idea really applies to anybody, and it stems from a problem. Well, the idea is harnessing the power of short form projects. So I'm a writer, so I do short form writing and longer form too. But I was talking about short form writing, but everybody has short form, and the problem is, I discovered this as a guitar player. As soon as you're done recording, say, an album or even a song or even a guitar solo in the song, you're automatically better at it than when you started. So it's good and it's bad, but by default, you practice it one more time. You do one more rep, you're that much stronger, right? I mean, I know that's not exactly physiologically correct, but the premise is the same, and especially, I think people, creatives, writers, but anybody, they say, okay, my first project, I'm going to sit down and write a 70,000 word novel. Well, by definition, you're going to be a lot better at the end of that novel than at the beginning. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a problem if it's your first project, because you want the beginning to be good too. It's not that it would be bad, but the ending is going to be better, and you tie up a lot of time, and you're offline for maybe a couple of years if you're writing something that big or you're doing that big of a project, and then when you come out of it, you have something that's half baked in the beginning and maybe overdone at the end.
Hey, listeners, don't forget to subscribe to email if you haven't already. Do this at dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. And if you are a new subscriber, look for the magazine coming up. You can get a free download as a new subscriber. That's dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. Thanks so much, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember, you are a superstar.
So a solution for this is if you start, again, it can be writing, but any project you're doing, if you start with a little bit. So if it's an article or a short story, and you practice with that, and then you can do another short story, and another short story, and another short story. You can always take one of those short stories and make a whole novel out of it. If you start with a little bit, you segment your improvement, you put it out, you get a quick turnaround time. Depends on, if you write a bestseller and you're smash hit, well, then you're going to make you might make a lot of money on it, but you can make a reasonable amount submitting little articles, get paid a couple $100 here and there, and be practicing along the way. So that's the reason I started my blog. I blog 3 times a week, which is excessive, but it's a practice. So, and it's really fun. So instead of spending 3 weeks working on something, I have 9 pieces at the end of that. So I segment my improvement. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think you're right on. I mean, I do 100% believe that you are better at the end of practicing a song than you were a minute ago or 3 minutes ago.
Yeah, right. Of course.
I do think that you have a unique feel to your presentation in that I'm never questioning if when you sit down to write your blog 3 times a week if you're enjoying it or not. Right. I know you are.
Well, most of the time, but
okay.
It was. I think it was either Duke Ellington or Leonard Bernstein. I forget which one said, "I don't need time. I need a deadline." And then the other one said, "To accomplish great things, you need a little less time than you'd like." I'm definitely paraphrasing. So we all think, and this is prevalent in the music community. Like if I could have a year off on a desert island to write my album would be perfect. Maybe, but A, you're probably not going to get a year off on a desert island. B, that's a really convenient excuse to not start because you don't have time on your desert island. And C, it would probably be terrible because you'd just be sitting around drinking margaritas all day, right?
Yeah.
So,
be terrible.
I mean, maybe, I don't know, that sounds cool too, but I think it would drive me crazy after a while. So, that's I think everybody has this thing about this. I think it's a misconception to do anything that's sort of out of your daily norm. Since I'm in the creative field, I think of writing a book or a song or something like that as out of the norm. So if I say, man, I really can't write a full album now, or I really can't sit down and write a novel, well, that's a nice excuse for me not starting at all. But if I can say, well, I can spend 10 minutes here and 20 minutes there, and I can write an article, I can write an essay, and I can write a poem, then you can put those together.
Yeah.
So it takes away that excuse for not starting.
Yes.
So I think short form is really helpful. I mean, I'm at the beginning of my writing career, and I think it was really helpful for me personally because it doesn't let me quit. It doesn't let me slack off. I'm like, I got to get this done.
Right.
So,
now, why do you say you're at the beginning of your writing career?
Well, I haven't been doing it that long. I mean, maybe I'll die tomorrow. Maybe this is my late period stuff. But I'd like to do a lot more. So I've been blogging since maybe 2007, but seriously since 2022, and had a book come out in 23. So it's, this is still a pretty new thing. I've been playing guitar for a long time too, so I've been dabbling in stuff for a while, but in other words, I haven't been doing it for 50 years. So
Right, okay, I hear you.
yeah.
I just wanted to hear your response to that because, if you have any disciplined track record, you are a writer by default. You're writing and producing and publishing, and I know that you have published, and you have a couple of ongoing, not projects, but for example, the book that you wrote that was a collection with and for senior citizens that you work with.
Yeah, right. Cities on a Hill, yes.
Cities on a Hill. And that is not the only one like that you've done, right?
Well, so I did that. I'm working on a second it's starting off, it's going to be a collection of essays crossed with a workbook so people can write their own life stories. So I'm kind of trying to get a handle on that. And then the first thing I did, my first project was, it's kind of half a book because it's mostly blank pages, which is, that's technically short form, right? Like, I was doing an astronomy program for a library, and they were collecting materials, and they had notebooks. And I said, oh, I'll make you guys a notebook. And the last thing a library needs is more books. And they're like, no, we're good. But I thought, well, I might as well make a notebook so you can write down what you're looking at. So I did that. I find that helps me pay attention if I can clearly articulate what I'm observing, whether it's through the telescope or in life. So I made one of those, and then around that, just after that, I started writing the Cities on a Hill, working in a nursing home during the COVID lockdown. So I wanted to witness what their time was like, the residents' time a year away from their families. So for many, the last year of their life. So, and nobody saw that because the doors were closed, and there wasn't any abuse happening, but it was just really a bad time. And somebody to say that, and I happened to see it, so it kind of fell in my lap. And I said, okay, well, I'll write this. So that's how that book came about. And then this third book that I'm working on is grappling with the question of when people retire and they go off to their in many cases very upscale communities, they often, not all the time, often grapple with a sense of being checked out of society. And one of the things that I advocate for is this is the wisdom time of your life, so you can impart all the things you've learned. I mean, imagine when you're hanging up and you've been, working all this time and doing all these podcasts and helping all these people, you will have amassed so much information, and then you're just sitting there and nobody's asking you. So I'm trying to give them a way to share that with the world. So do that, and then also do a podcast with the community up in Charlottesville so they can share their thoughts. And it's really pretty fun.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a tangent. Sorry, I'm the tangent king.
Yeah, no, it's not a tangent. It is time to talk. This is the time to plug what you're working on, and why did that strike you? Why did you? Not everybody says this is important. Not everybody says I need to document what I'm witnessing here. Now, I understand a little bit just from I'm going to make an educated guess that as a creative, as a writer, this is something that you're inclined to do. Anyway, a little bit Harriet the Spy, right? I just write things down.
Yeah, right.
And that's a processing. I'm a little bit like that. When I'm lucky enough to be able to put pen to paper and actually put on paper what might be coming through my brain, that's not
great.
That's not as accessible as it sounds either, right? To be able to do that.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So I'm assuming that you have some practice and personal interest in that, and then now this important time comes during COVID in the nursing home, and you say, now's the time for me to do this in this way.
It was, and I wish I could say that, I was that on the ball and said, I should do this, but, a couple things happened. So first, a little old lady told me I should. And she just kind of had this air of authority about, you're like, yes, ma'am, So it was, it was during the lockdown, and so the lockdowns would ebb and flow, and sometimes everybody would be confined to their rooms, sometimes just the building would be restricted, but the building was always restricted, and sometimes they're in their room, sometimes they weren't. And by this time, I'd become the activities director, and I like to think of myself as a genuine, authentic person, but I was losing my way. And one of the lines in the book is I was in danger of turning it into my shirt, my polyester business casual fake. And I was in hot water with the management. I was always in hot water with the management, and the residents were sitting at their tables, all facing the same way, 6 feet apart, one person per table, wearing the mask when you're not eating, so you can't talk to each other like that. And this little old lady, we'll call her Martha from the book, and she tugs on my sleeve and she says, "Hey, I had a dream that we wrote a book and we sold 1 million copies, and the publisher was calling for a second printing." And now, getting in the writing industry, I was like, "Wow, that's an ambitious first printing." But and I laughed, and then was kind of jovial about it. I said, "Hey, can I tell everybody?" And she goes, "No, that'll be our little secret." Here I am telling the whole world. But she said, "Hey, don't forget about us." So I said, "Okay, well, if I ever write a book, I'll dedicate it to you." So that kind of stuck in my mind, and I had been writing essays for years, but not a book. And I'd always wanted to write a book, and I was really horrified at what was going on at the time. About maybe 2 months after that, one of my friends who lived there, his name is Coach, and he passed away from natural causes. And I went to his funeral. I was really sad and really missed him. And then he didn't die from COVID; he just was old. And then I went stargazing that evening. I'm an amateur astronomer, and I ended up writing an essay about that whole thing. And I showed it to my mom, and she's like, "Hey, man, that's really good. You should send it to Sky and Telescope." I was like, "Yeah," which is a big astronomy magazine. I said, "Nah, you should send it." I said, "All right." So they have an essay in each magazine. So I sent it off there, and the guy wrote back and he said, "Yeah, sure, we'll publish it." Well, it was a beginner's luck. I was like, "Whoa, okay." So that kind of got I was like, "Man, I should try some more of this because I really enjoy doing this." And then it kind of clicked from what Martha said, and like, okay, I need to do something here. And so broadening this back out, I mean, I hope your listeners find that it's a personally interesting story, but it might not really apply to them. But so sort of the mechanics behind that I think is interesting if you're running a business or you're involved in business, you're an entrepreneur in any sense of the word, is if you see a problem and you can use your particular talents and skills to solve it, that's a good path to pursue, I think. For a long time, I missed the problem part of the equation, and I thought, okay, I have these talents, and these talents, heavy air quotes, and skills, things that I like to do. How can I make money off of that?
Yeah.
Then when I started looking for, well, how can I use this skill set to solve a problem that already exists, that's how you make money off of it, or that's how you answer a need with it. And in this case, I haven't made a lot of money off the book. I mean, but the neat thing is it is paying off in other ways. It's opening conversations with people. We just had this thing, and there really hasn't been a national reckoning of it, and now people can talk about it. And now people do talk about it, and I go and talk to people about it and share the stories of these old folks, and we can learn from it, and we can put it on the table and work from it. So using my skill set and applying it to a problem has been rewarding for me, or meaningful for me at least. So I think anybody can do that with, when you take, I saw a great Venn diagram. I think it was in the book Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon, but I could be mistaken. Of you find what loves you, or what you love, what loves you back, and what the world needs. And then at the intersection of those three things, then you can do stuff with that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting thing. So that's one of the lessons I got from it. Kind of a boring lesson.
No. That's what lots of us are starving for that kind of story, of I went through this path that wasn't really 1, 2, 3, 4 A to B, and it's extremely helpful to just hear somebody say, "This is what my thought process was. It didn't exactly happen this way or that way."
And it's a matter of just getting kicked in the face, metaphorically speaking, over and over and over and over. And there's so many. Just being in the creative field, there's so many cool things that I like to do, and sometimes they're applicable, and sometimes they're not. It took me a long time to realize being kicked in the face is being ignored. It's like I can do something. I can set up on the sidewalk right there, and I can't juggle. But if I could juggle, people might pay for that, or people might not. But if I'm serving somebody in the way that I like to operate in the world, everything seems to work really good with that. And that's just my personality. everybody has a different approach to it. But this goes across any field. It doesn't have to be creative. You know, if you like, well, landscape is a perfect example. You know, if you're good at landscape, well, find somebody's lawn that needs to be mowed, right? You don't necessarily need to make a random monument in the middle of somewhere, but find something that needs to be done and then do it. So,
Yeah.
that's a couple thoughts there.
Yeah. Well, you let's see. What I wanted to also comment on is the idea around short form and is so. Well, first of all, I find the business around it hilarious because when I was in school, right, college age, short form was the thing. No matter what it is, video, movie. I was into filmmaking for a little while, and that especially is a place where you have to grapple with. First, you have to learn how to do short form in like a class,
Right.
And then you're taught this will never be anything you could ever do in the professional world, and there's no market for it.
Typical.
Hey, listeners, don't forget to subscribe to email if you haven't already. Do this at dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. And if you are a new subscriber, look for the magazine coming up. You can get a free download as a new subscriber. That's dearbusinesscoachpodcast.com. Thanks so much, and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember, you are a superstar.
College.
So that was 20, right? So that was 20 years ago, and now if you don't know how to do short form, you're not in the market.
Yeah.
So what is your take on that?
Well, you know, it's starting with a specific and then broadening it out. Just thinking out loud. That's an interesting point. For writers and content creators, I think, if you want to get, there's different ways to get paid, right? So if you're looking to get so as a writer, if I get a magazine article published, okay, or a book published, right? So I'm relying on somebody else's audience, so I have to rely on an editor and a gatekeeper for that. Mm-hmm. So the problem is they're struggling right now, and if you talk to a lot of authors and a lot of writers, they'll be willing to stay in the publishing industry, and it's specific to the gatekeeper's tastes. So I don't write vampire romance, right? Okay, you know, so well, fire me, right? So
Right.
that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but
Right.
so take it in the case of journalism. I'm not a journalist, but if you write for a paper, you're going to answer to the editor what the narrative they want out there. Well, the interesting thing that people forgot about is that there's real people reading this, and sometimes people don't want to read vampire romance, and sometimes people don't want to read a narrative. So with writing, say Substack is sort of quickly becoming the Xerox term, right? So,
Yeah.
so that's the subscriber model. So my blog, you can be a paid subscriber. You don't get anything extra than a free subscriber, except, you know, feeling good. Yeah, I gotta make some stickers or something. And I really appreciate my paid subscribers. I also didn't want to put a paywall up. So that's why I don't make a distinction. But the point is that people who like what I do can directly vote for that, and they can say, yes, we want to see more of this in the world. It used to, so the competing model to that in, say, journalism is clickbait and advertisements. So they have to run stories that a lot of people will read and sell ads, right? So you can't get off in the weeds, you can't be obscure, you can't have a niche voice because you need a lot of eyeballs and you need people going, what? You know?
Yeah.
You know, they said, Meghan Markle said what? You know? And,
Right.
and so it's kind of a race to the bottom at that point. So now, how does that tie into short form? So people want to read stuff consistently, right? They don't want to say, well, you know, they want to say, hey, my book's coming out soon. Hey, my book's coming out soon. Hey, my book's coming out soon.
No.
You can share excerpts from it, but they might ruin the book. You can do serial publication. Charles Dickens did that way back in the day, right?
Yeah.
So you know, the original short form. So I like doing that because I can be building a body of work that people can interact with, that can evolve and improve. It's a way for me to think out loud. I have a lot of readers who think differently than I do, so it's really nice to put something out there and know that it can't have too many loose threads because they'll pull it. I got like a couple of guys who you'd be like, oh, you missed a word there. So, oh yeah, that, and also an idea. Like, so if I say something to the void of the internet, people be like, well, what do you mean by that, right? So it's kind of like being the rude uncle at a Thanksgiving dinner, and you can just talk, and people sit around and be like, no, I don't think so. So it's really a slow thinking out loud. So kind of going all over the place right here. So, and then you can monetize it, which again, very grateful to the people who support that. You can turn around and make those into articles. I think it's really kind of a Wild West time for content creators. It was like this maybe like in 2010, when YouTube was getting big and people were trying to figure that out. The difference between now and then, I would say, again, just thinking out loud, we thought, we meaning content creators, especially musicians and probably filmmakers, but musicians thought, oh, okay, I don't need a big record label anymore. I can put my own thing in it, right?
Yeah.
However, it kind of got, you're dependent on Spotify right now. So instead of 20 record labels, there's 3 of them, depending on what Spotify pays you. So that kind of got sucked up into the corporate morass there. In this case, I think it's much more direct person to person that you're selling to. And short form is good because you can keep the stuff coming. So when I ever write my novel, I'd like to figure out how to serialize that and have people reading along as I write it. That would be a cool thing there. How does that apply to other creatives and other people in the field? I like to look at trends and not chase the trend. That's important. We try to figure out where I fit in best with the trend. I don't fit in the literary world right now. Literary world is overwhelmingly female right now, and so, but that doesn't, that's the gatekeepers, right? And overwhelmingly a certain viewpoint and a certain way of looking at the world different than mine. And that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But I probably wouldn't do well in the traditional field right now. With all these other things, I can make my own way. And that's a really exciting way for business people and entrepreneurs in any industry to say, okay, well, either I fit in the mainstream and I can excel in that, or I don't fit in the mainstream and where's a niche that I can build. And I think we're in a good time for that.
Well, it's interesting that you are saying that to yourself because it's so, on one hand, it's very practical and it's very you're stepping outside of yourself and you're taking a look at like what the market is. That's not an average skill to have either.
I mean, I have moral problems with that, but there's also, I think, a really practical program of, because that turns art into propaganda.
Right.
So I don't care what the person looks like. I don't actually care what the person's, well, I call it the Frank Sinatra problem, right? Like the person's personal life. When do you draw a line? I draw a line at Bill Cosby. Draw it at Frank Sinatra? I don't. Right? So Frank Sinatra was not a nice guy.
Yeah.
One of the best singers in the world, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
I love Frank Sinatra. Right? So, but I don't like what he did.
Right.
So, and then, so we turn to that. We get cancel culture. We get into all these different things, and that doesn't let you make art, because if art is telling the truth, and that's what I'm trying to do, is tell the truth. So it doesn't matter what I look like. Well, if it matters to you what I look like, well then, go read a vampire book. So yeah. So I think. So, but the good news is if I can say, okay, because people want to hear truth, right? There's something. I'm not saying that I can tell truth, but I can try to aim at truth, and try to do my best to articulate what I think it is, right? So that's the weird thing with when I write something. If I write it for me, I if I write it to look cool, like, I feel that on a certain level. And if I do something to be cynical or to get ahead or to be ambitious in a bad sense of the word, like I can feel that,
Yeah.
right? And I don't want to do that. So, but when I do something that I think is the right thing to do, even though I don't know 100% what that is, I know what's not the right thing to do. Right? If I can aim in that direction, people seem to react well to that. People want that, and that's another problem that I'm solving along the way. Right? So it's like,
Yeah.
people want to live right.
Yeah.
Not that I tell people how to live right, but like, we know it's true. We know it's propaganda, and that's. It's like 1984. I don't know. It's like when was it Winston? When he finds something real, it matters so much to him, right? Ultimately, it's his undoing. But when he finds something real, that's what matters right there. So that's what I want to do. That's why it was real, and to put it out there. And that's so if the big industry trends are going towards, well, you have to be from a certain group. Well, to me, that's irrelevant, and I want to write to what's relevant.
Right.
So that's what I'm doing. So yeah, I don't got a lot of opinions, but
Yeah.
podcasting work. Any thoughts on that?
I think that, yeah, well, I hope, I was going to say that I think that just from meeting you a couple of times and listening to you speak, I mean, that's how I learn about people is I'm listening to intonation and I'm listening to choice of vocabulary and tone of voice. And I get the idea that, you wouldn't be able to turn out a piece of work or a piece of writing that you didn't genuinely sit there and think wholeheartedly about. Do I need to know you personally, or do I what if I've met you in person before I read your work.
Okay, right.
So what if I had? So I don't know what would have happened if I had read something of your work first and then met you after the fact.
That's who he is.
Right. So, but it's hard for me to imagine that your work isn't extremely genuine, anything but. So I don't know that you personally, Josh Urban, could fabricate anything but that.
I try not to.
So I think that that in and of itself is part of your character, and I also think that for the most part, when you come across someone who is fabricating that, you can tell. We can tell.
Yeah,
I can tell.
I think so. Yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah, well, and it's an interesting thing because it's kind of like why, and everybody has to make their own conclusion. But I found that helpful if I can get clear on why I'm doing something, and a lot of times it's because I need to eat, right? So, but again, getting back to that Venn diagram of what I love, what loves me back, and then what the world needs. Like if I can be operating at that intersection, then it works, and I consider myself extraordinarily lucky because I don't have to sell. That's where selling out comes from. If you're doing something that you don't love, or if you're doing, and that doesn't mean I have to be again on a beach all day, right? A lot of times it's doing paperwork. I don't love that, right? But I mean, where I can feel like I'm making the world a little, at least not less dark.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of a baseline thing. It's like at least don't hurt people, right? And bring them up a little bit. And then I absolutely have to get paid for that, So and that's one of the things too. Like follow your passion. And there's so many things we can talk about that for hours. But I'm trying to be useful.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Well, I know that.
Not
Are you
everybody
okay
agrees.
for a minute? Maybe 5 more minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Of course.
Well, I think that you basically, have a unique perspective in the business of what you're doing, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm fascinated by the idea of how you are using the process of being useful in a market sense to say, well, I have to, for myself, make this process work for me creatively in a rewarding way. It has to be meaningful too, or it's not going to work. It just won't work.
It's right. It's just like, well, and if I wanted to make a lot of money, I could go sell used cars.
Yeah.
And all due respect to used car salesmen, it looks like an interesting job, right? I don't.
Yeah.
That doesn't resonate with me. And and I mean, I've gone real close to being hungry to find something that resonates with me. So, I'm not saying everybody's got to go, follow. It's different than following your bliss. And I can't quite articulate why. But one of the things that I'm really working on now is I'm trying to pay attention to what's the opportunities that are right in front of me to do something. I have an example. So there's this broad problem in the world right now that social media and phones are really harmful to kids and adults too, but kids are really having a hard time with it. And I've seen this firsthand at a school that I DJ for. I do DJ stuff too. And their culture is eroding because of these phones and social media and all sorts of things, and just slightly. But they're working on it, and they're a great institution. They're working on correcting, and they're trying to figure out how do you correct that. I mean, it's such a how do the biochemical processes that happen when you look at the phone. Like, I mean, how do you fix that? Right. So everybody's trying to figure this out on a national level. They're doing phone-free schools and everything. Like, everybody's trying to figure this out, right? So I'm trying to come into this equation. Okay, so it's a very top-level thing. So I'm working on. I'm going to do a talk with the kids. I'm working on building an assembly is what I'm going towards. But like, what? Stay off your phone. You shouldn't do it, right? Like, right? So I'm doing something about like a call to greatness and instead of your phone and working on this stuff, and it's still it's baloney right now. It's not ready. It will be, but it's not ready right now, and I know it, and then the kids are going to know it, right? If I go up there. So I just did this DJ their middle school dance, and I accidentally made the boys look bad in front of the girls. The girls were like 10 feet taller than them, and I put them in a hard spot. And then they were requesting this song that was not school appropriate, and I couldn't play. Well, so I ended up actually getting on the mic and saying, no, I will not play that song, because it's not school appropriate. And let me tell you what, Elizabeth, for the first time in my performance career, and I've had many reasons to before, but everybody's been polite, but I got booed. And they were like, boo! And like we were at odds. And then the principal got wind of this and dressed them down, which is her job, so then they wrote apology notes to her, and like it was this big thing, right? So I had this pivotal moment when one of the fellas came up to me and asked me another song, and I said, well, I'm not allowed to play that. And then I realized, here I am trying to be a moral beacon and just punting. And I said, even if I was allowed to play that, contractually obligated not to play that, but even if I was allowed, I wouldn't, because I don't think it's the right thing to do. But it was loud, and they couldn't really hear what was going on. So I thought, here's something I can do. I'm going to write them a letter, not telling them how to think, but telling them why I wouldn't play the song, and how I'm coming up with that conclusion, and how I think that there's, it matters what I put in my head, and then it also, rules are an interesting thing. They sort of serve as guardrails, so we don't have to learn by going into the ditch, and we feel dumb when we bump up against them, but it's better than the alternative. And then finally, we have agency over what we choose to listen to, and that makes us free to have agency. So that's what I do. What are you going to do? So I wrote them a letter. So there's a writing piece. That's something I can start with. So that was a problem that presented itself. The kids are ticked off. I painted them into a corner. What are we going to do about it? Now I can do something about it. So I wrote to that, and that's what I'm going to do, and then I'll just wait for the next thing to show up. So with that, I'm always on assignment, and there's always something.
Yeah. The response, your response to it is your job to articulate.
Yes. and maybe I'll get shanked at the fall dance. I don't know, but.
Well, say that again. You said that because we have agency, you are choosing not to give this song airtime because you have agency, which is what makes you free.
Right. I'm sorry.
That's the line.
Right. And for them, they live in a world with, in a way, more rules than I do. My rules are more subtle. Is if I break the rule, I don't get paid. If they break the rule, they lose their allowance, right? But I might lose an account if I break a rule. But their agency, so they appear to live in a world with very little agency. they're to do what they're told, but you always have a choice of what to think. And you always have a choice of where you turn your attention to. So they have the agency to listen to good music or listen to trash. And a lot of the kids listen to really good music. I was so impressed by their music taste, so I told them that. So this is really cool. So you have the agency to choose wisely. And of course, you're gonna, I listen to some songs that I wouldn't play. So I'm not going to say, a saint or anything. I don't want to give people moral advice. I can only share my and that's sort of what, getting back to the intro with the short form at the Hollins talk, the Roanoke Regional Writers Conference. I always want to share what I'm working on, but I don't want to tell a room full of writers how to do their job. I mean, Diane Fanning was there. She's like a national multi-bestseller, so I'm not going to tell her how to write. So, yeah. I don't know. Any other thoughts on that?
Oh, well, it's time.
And
that was that.
I gotta go entertain some old folks.
Well, thank you. Let me say thank you.
Absolutely.
And I really, really appreciate it. And truthfully, because this is kind of improv, I have questions that I didn't ask you, so maybe there will be more to come.
Absolutely.
You've been listening to the Dear Business Coach podcast. My name's Elizabeth Walker, producer and host. Don't forget to subscribe to email. Thank you so much for being here, and find one thing today to move your business forward. Contact me at dearbusinesscoachpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, you are a superstar.